She walked past him without a single glance, her expensive heels clicking against the pavement, her perfume lingering in the air like a promise she'd never keep. He sat there, dirty and broken in appearance, watching her eyes scan right over him as if he were invisible. In that moment, everything he suspected about her became painfully clear. But what she didn't know, what nobody in that church parking lot could possibly know, was that the beggar she ignored held more power than anyone she'd ever met. One decision, one moment of kindness or cruelty, that's all it took to change a destiny. And hers? It had just been sealed. This is Nemi's story, where African folktales meet real-life lessons that will change how you see the world. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. Ethan Cole had everything a man could want, except the one thing money couldn't buy: genuine love. At 32 years old, he stood as the heir to the Cole Empire, a billionaire mafia family that controlled half of New York's underground operations and legitimate businesses alike. His father, Richard Cole, was a name whispered with equal parts fear and respect across the city. Ethan himself had just returned from a dangerous international mission, one that had tested his strength, his loyalty, and his willingness to do whatever the family required. But Richard wanted more than business success from his son. He wanted legacy. He wanted grandchildren. He wanted the Cole name to continue through generations. "You need a wife, Ethan," Richard had said one evening in his study, cigar smoke curling around his weathered face. "A good woman. Respectable. Someone who can stand beside you when things get ugly." Ethan had nodded, but his heart felt heavy. Every woman who approached him saw dollar signs, not the man beneath the tailored suits and expensive watches. They wanted access to his world, his wealth, his power, but never truly him. "I want you back in church," Richard continued. "That's where decent women are. Women with values." Ethan agreed, though skepticism settled in his chest like stone. The following Sunday, he attended the prestigious Manhattan Community Church, a beautiful building where wealthy families and humble believers gathered under the same roof. The choir's voices rose in harmony, and Ethan found himself scanning the congregation, searching for something, someone, real. That's when he saw her. Vanessa Moore stood at the front of the choir, her voice soaring above the others. She was stunning, tall, elegant, with flawless skin and perfectly styled hair. Her designer dress hugged her curves, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew she was beautiful. After the service, Vanessa made her approach. "Ethan Cole, isn't it?" she said, her smile practiced and brilliant. "I've heard so much about you. Your family does such important work in the city." Ethan recognized the calculation in her eyes immediately. She'd done her research. She knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. "Just attending service," he replied politely, keeping his distance. "Well, I hope you'll come back," Vanessa purred. "Perhaps we could have coffee sometime? I'd love to get to know you better." Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa positioned herself strategically, always in Ethan's line of sight, always perfectly dressed, always ready with a compliment or an invitation. Other women in the church followed her lead, suddenly interested in the handsome newcomer with the expensive car and designer clothes. But Ethan felt nothing. Their attention felt hollow, transactional. He could see through their manufactured interest to the greed beneath. One night, lying awake in his penthouse apartment, an idea formed in Ethan's mind. If he wanted to find a woman with a genuine heart, he needed to remove everything these women were attracted to: the money, the status, the power. He needed to become someone they would normally ignore. He needed to become invisible. The next morning, Ethan shared his plan with Marcus, his trusted driver and longtime friend. "You want to do what?" Marcus asked, his eyes widening. "I want to dress as a homeless man and sit outside the church," Ethan explained. "I want to see how people treat someone who has nothing. That's the real test of character." Marcus shook his head, but a smile played at his lips. "Your father's going to think you've lost your mind." "Maybe I have," Ethan admitted. "But I'd rather lose my mind than lose my heart to the wrong woman." That Sunday, everything changed. Ethan arrived early, dressed in torn, dirty clothes he'd purchased from a thrift store. He rubbed dirt on his face and hands, messed his hair, and positioned himself on the ground near the church entrance. Marcus, dressed in one of Ethan's expensive suits, drove the luxury car to the front entrance, playing the role of the wealthy Cole heir. Church members began arriving, and Ethan watched carefully. Most people walked past him without acknowledgement. Some clutched their purses tighter. A few mothers pulled their children closer, as if poverty were contagious. Then Vanessa arrived, her eyes immediately locking onto Marcus in the expensive suit. She practically glided toward the car, her smile dazzling, completely ignoring the beggar sitting just feet away. In fact, when her heel accidentally came close to Ethan's outstretched hand, she jerked away with visible disgust, her nose wrinkling as if she'd encountered something foul. Ethan's heart sank. He'd hoped to be wrong about her, but the test revealed everything. Then he saw another woman approaching, someone he hadn't noticed before. She wore a simple dress, nothing expensive, and carried herself with quiet grace. She was beautiful in an understated way, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. A young boy, maybe 7 years old, walked beside her, holding her hand. She was heading toward the entrance when she noticed Ethan. And unlike everyone else, she stopped. The woman knelt down beside him, her simple dress pooling around her knees on the cold pavement. Up close, Ethan could see the worry lines around her eyes, the tiredness that came from carrying heavy burdens. But her smile was genuine, warm, and completely without judgment. "Good morning," she said softly. "Are you hungry?" Ethan, maintaining his disguise, nodded weakly. The woman reached into her worn purse and pulled out a small bag containing a sandwich and an apple. "I packed this for my son's lunch, but we can share," she said, handing it to him. "Noah, sweetheart, we'll get something after church, okay?" The boy beside her nodded without complaint, though Ethan could see the disappointment flicker across his young face. The child had been looking forward to that lunch. "God bless you, sir," the woman continued, then reached back into her purse. She pulled out a few crumpled dollar bills, maybe $5 or $6 total, and pressed them into Ethan's dirty hand. "It's not much, but I hope it helps." Ethan's throat tightened. He could tell from her threadbare purse, her mended dress, and her son's worn sneakers that she didn't have much to give. Yet she gave anyway. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. She smiled again, then bowed her head. "Dear Lord, please watch over this man. Provide for his needs, keep him safe, and let him know he's not forgotten. In Jesus' name, amen." "Amen," little Noah echoed. As they walked toward the church entrance, Ethan heard the boy ask, "Mama, are you sure we'll be okay without lunch?" "We'll be fine, baby," she assured him. "God always provides." Ethan sat there, stunned. He'd just witnessed something he'd never encountered in his world of wealth and power: pure, selfless kindness. This woman had sacrificed her own child's lunch and her limited money for a complete stranger. Inside the church, Ethan later learned her name was Lily Carter. She served as an usher, greeting people with the same warmth she'd shown him. She was a single mother, worked 2 jobs, and cared for her sick father while raising Noah alone. Despite her struggles, her face radiated peace and contentment. Vanessa, meanwhile, spent the entire service positioned near Marcus, laughing too loudly at his comments, touching his arm unnecessarily, and making sure everyone noticed her interest in who she believed was Ethan Cole. After the service, Ethan watched Vanessa approach Marcus again. "I was hoping we could have that coffee today," she said, her voice dripping with suggestion. "I know a lovely place nearby. Very exclusive." Marcus, playing his role, politely declined. "Perhaps another time." Vanessa's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Of course. A man like you must be very busy. I'll be patient." As she walked away, she passed by where Ethan still sat in his beggar's disguise. This time, she didn't just ignore him. She made a show of her disgust. "Someone should call the police," she said loudly to her friend. "It's disgusting having homeless people right at the church entrance. They make everyone uncomfortable. This is a respectable establishment." Her friend agreed. "Absolutely. They should go to a shelter or something. Not here where decent people gather." Ethan felt anger rise in his chest, but he remained still, his head down, absorbing every word. Lily, on her way out with Noah, overheard Vanessa's comments. She stopped and turned. "Vanessa," Lily said quietly but firmly. Jesus himself had nowhere to lay his head. "Are we too good to show kindness to those he loved most?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh please, Lily. Always so self-righteous. Easy for you to defend them when you're practically one of them yourself." The cruel words hung in the air. Lily's face flushed, but she held her composure. "I'd rather be humble and kind than wealthy and heartless," Lily replied, then took Noah's hand and walked away with dignity. Ethan made his disguise a weekly routine. Every Sunday for the next month, he returned as the beggar, and the pattern remained consistent. Lily never failed to stop. Some weeks she brought food. Other weeks, she brought coffee or simply sat beside him for a few minutes, talking about hope and God's faithfulness. She introduced him to Noah properly, and the boy began saving small drawings to give the nice homeless man. "Mama says everyone deserves kindness," Noah told him one Sunday, handing over a crayon drawing of a rainbow. "She says God sees everything we do." Ethan carefully folded the drawing and tucked it away. It would become one of his most treasured possessions. Vanessa's behavior, however, grew worse. Her pursuit of Marcus, who she still believed was Ethan, became more aggressive. She wore increasingly revealing outfits to church, positioned herself strategically, and made sure to publicly demonstrate her charitable heart by dropping large checks in the offering plate where everyone could see. But whenever she passed the beggar, her mask of righteousness fell away. She complained about his presence, suggested he was probably a drug addict, and once even called him a parasite on society. Through it all, Lily remained constant, a beacon of genuine goodness in a sea of pretense. One Sunday, Ethan watched as Lily arrived later than usual, her face drawn with worry. She still stopped to greet him, but her hands trembled as she handed him a small bag of groceries. "I'm sorry I can't stay long today," she said. "My father's not doing well. The medical bills keep piling up, and She stopped herself, offering a weak smile. "But God is good. He'll make a way." As she walked away, Ethan made a decision. He'd seen enough. Lily Carter was the real treasure hidden in plain sight, a woman with a heart of gold polished by hardship rather than dimmed by it. Vanessa was exactly what he'd suspected, beautiful on the outside, hollow within. That evening, Ethan sat in his father's study and told him everything. About the disguise, about Lily's consistent kindness, about Vanessa's cruelty, about the little boy who drew rainbows for a beggar. Richard listened carefully, then nodded slowly. "You found something rare, son. A heart that gives when it costs something. That's the kind of woman who'll stand with you when the empire crumbles." "I'm going to reveal myself to her," Ethan said. "Next Sunday. And if she rejects you for the deception?" Ethan smiled. "Then she'll have taught me one final lesson about integrity. But I don't think she will. Her heart is too good." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. Today, the disguise would end. Today, Lily would learn the truth about the beggar she'd fed, prayed for, and treated with dignity for weeks. His heart pounded with an unfamiliar nervousness. The same man who'd negotiated million-dollar deals and faced dangerous enemies, without flinching, now felt terrified of one woman's reaction. "You ready for this?" Marcus asked, leaning against the doorframe of Ethan's bedroom. "No," Ethan admitted. "But it's time." He dressed in his finest suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with Italian leather shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He wore his father's Rolex, the one Richard had given him when he officially joined the family business. He wanted Lily to see exactly who he was, not to impress her, but to be completely honest for the first time. The plan was simple. Marcus would arrive first in the luxury car, as usual. But this time, Ethan would step out of it instead of sitting on the ground in rags. Sunday morning arrived with brilliant sunshine, as if even the weather knew something significant was about to happen. Ethan sat in the back of his Mercedes, watching through tinted windows as church members began to arrive. Vanessa appeared first, her dress even more expensive than usual. She'd clearly escalated her campaign, believing her persistence would eventually pay off. She positioned herself near the entrance, scanning every arriving car like a hawk hunting prey. Then Lily's old Honda pulled into the parking lot, sputtering slightly as she parked in the farthest spot from the entrance. Ethan watched her help Noah out of the car, smoothing down his hair with motherly affection. She wore the same mended dress he'd seen before, but she carried herself with quiet dignity that no amount of money could buy. "Now," Ethan told Marcus. The Mercedes pulled smoothly to the church entrance. Marcus stepped out and opened the back door. Ethan emerged, and the morning sunlight caught the expensive fabric of his suit, the gleam of his watch, the unmistakable aura of wealth and power. Vanessa's eyes went wide. She rushed forward immediately, her face lighting up with triumphant excitement. "Mr. Cole, you finally decided to arrive in person instead of sending your driver." She laughed, her hand already reaching for his arm. "I've been hoping we could." "Excuse me," Ethan said politely but firmly, stepping past her. His eyes were locked on Lily, who stood near the entrance with Noah, greeting arriving members with her usual warm smile. Vanessa's mouth fell open as Ethan walked directly past her without a second glance. Lily looked up as Ethan approached, her professional usher's smile in place. "Good morning, welcome to." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening with confusion. Something about this man seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Good morning, Lily," Ethan said softly. She blinked. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a carefully folded piece of paper, Noah's rainbow drawing. He held it up, and Lily's face went pale. "You're..." Her voice trailed off as recognition crashed over her like a wave. "The beggar you fed every Sunday," Ethan finished gently. "The man you prayed for. The man you gave your son's lunch to even though you barely had enough for yourselves." Lily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "But, I don't understand." "What?" Noah tugged his mother's dress. "Mama, is that the nice homeless man? He looks different." By now, other church members had gathered, sensing something significant was happening. Vanessa pushed through the crowd, her face contorted with confusion and growing horror. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" Ethan didn't even look at Vanessa. His eyes remained fixed on Lily. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Please? I owe you an explanation." Lily nodded, unable to speak. Ethan gestured toward a quiet garden area beside the church, and she followed, Noah holding tightly to her hand. The crowd parted for them, whispers erupting in their wake. In the garden, surrounded by flowering bushes and morning bird song, Ethan told her everything. "My name is Ethan Cole. My father is Richard Cole. You may have heard of our family. We're wealthy, very wealthy, and powerful in ways that complicate everything, including finding someone to share my life with." Lily listened, her face a mixture of shock and confusion. "Every woman I've ever met wanted my money, my status, my connections," Ethan continued. "They saw a bank account, not a person. So I decided to test something. I disguised myself as someone with nothing, no wealth, no power, no status. I wanted to see who would show kindness to someone who couldn't offer them anything in return. And I failed that test completely," a voice said behind them. They turned to find Vanessa standing there, her face pale, her hands trembling. She'd followed them and heard everything. You were the beggar?" Vanessa whispered, realization devastating her. "All those Sundays. While I was..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "While you called me a parasite," Ethan said quietly. "While you suggested calling the police. While you complained about my presence at God's house." Vanessa's legs seemed to weaken. She gripped a nearby bench for support. "But I didn't know. If I'd known it was you." "That's exactly the point," Ethan interrupted. "If you'd known it was me, you would have treated me differently." "But Lily..." He turned back to the woman who'd captured his heart. Lily treated a homeless stranger with the same dignity she'd show anyone. She gave sacrificially. She prayed earnestly. She saw a human being, not a transaction. Tears streamed down Lily's face. I just did what Jesus would do. Anyone would have." "No," Ethan said firmly. "They wouldn't. I sat there for weeks, Lily. Hundreds of people passed me. You were one of the very few who stopped. And you stopped every single time." He took her hands in his, and even through his expensive suit and polished appearance, she could still see the man she'd prayed for, vulnerable, honest, real. "I fell in love with your heart," Ethan said. "With your kindness. With the way you raised Noah to see people, not circumstances. With your faith that keeps giving even when you have nothing left to give." Vanessa made a sound like a wounded animal and turned away, stumbling back toward the church, her dreams of wealth and status crumbling with each step. Lily looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Ethan's face. "You deceived me." "I did," he admitted. "And I'm sorry for that. But I needed to know the truth. I needed to find someone real." "And you think that's me?" she asked. "I'm just a struggling single mother with more bills than dollars, and a sick father I can barely afford to care for. I work 2 jobs, and still can barely make ends meet. What could I possibly offer someone like you?" Ethan smiled, and it was the most genuine smile Lily had ever seen on anyone's face. Everything that matters, he said. Lily Carter, I'm not asking you to offer me anything. I'm asking if you'll let me offer you everything. Not just money or security, but partnership, respect, and love that I've never felt for anyone else. Will you let me into your life? Will you let me help with your father's medical care, with Noah's future, with building something real together? Lily stood frozen, her mind racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to women like her, single mothers who counted pennies and prayed for miracles just to make it through another week. Yet here stood Ethan Cole, one of the wealthiest men in New York, holding her worn hands in his perfectly manicured ones, looking at her like she was the most precious thing he'd ever found. I need to think, she whispered. This is too much, too fast. Ethan nodded, releasing her hands gently. Of course. Take all the time you need. But Lily, I want you to know something. He knelt down to Noah's level, and the little boy's eyes went wide. Noah, your mama is the most amazing woman I've ever met. She taught me what real kindness looks like. And if she'll let me, I'd like to be part of your family. Would that be okay with you? Noah looked up at his mother, then back at Ethan. Are you really rich, mister? Ethan laughed. Yes, I am. Can you help Mama fix our car? It makes funny noises and she cries sometimes when it won't start. The innocent honesty of the child's words struck Ethan's heart. This was Lily's reality, crying over a broken-down car, worrying about transportation to her 2 jobs, carrying burdens no one should carry alone. I can do much more than that, buddy, Ethan promised. If your mama says yes. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan courted Lily properly. He didn't overwhelm her with extravagant gifts or flash his wealth. Instead, he showed up at her second job, a diner where she waitressed evening shifts, and sat quietly in a corner booth, keeping her company during slow hours. He brought Noah books and spent Saturday afternoons teaching the boy to play soccer in the park. He visited Lily's father in the rundown care facility, sitting beside the elderly man's bed and simply listening to stories about Lily's childhood. Richard Cole watched his son's transformation with quiet approval. You've changed, he told Ethan one evening. You're softer, happier. I've found what I was looking for, Ethan replied. Someone who sees me, not the Cole empire. But not everyone celebrated. Vanessa more spiraled into bitterness. She couldn't accept that she'd lost the opportunity of a lifetime because of her own cruelty. She spread rumors around the church, suggesting Lily had somehow tricked Ethan, that she was a gold digger who'd manipulated the situation. But the whispers fell on deaf ears. Too many people had witnessed Vanessa's behavior, her arrogance, her treatment of the beggar. Finally, 3 weeks after the revelation, Lily invited Ethan to her small apartment for dinner. She cooked a simple meal, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, and the 3 of them sat around her worn kitchen table like a real family. After Noah went to bed, Lily and Ethan sat on her threadbare couch, and she finally gave him her answer. I forgive you for the deception, she said softly. I understand why you did it. And Ethan, she took a deep breath. I've fallen in love with you too. Not because of your money or your family name, but because of the man I see when you're with Noah, when you visit my father, when you sit in that diner booth just to keep me company. You're kind. You're patient. You're real. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. Does that mean? Yes, Lily whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He pulled out a ring, not the massive diamond he could have afforded, but a simple, elegant band with a modest stone. I wanted something that reflected us, he explained. Not flash, but substance. The wedding took place 3 months later in the same church where they'd met. It was beautiful but humble, attended by both the Cole family's elite circle and Lily's working-class friends. Richard Cole walked Lily down the aisle alongside her father, who Ethan had moved to the best medical facility in the state, where he was finally receiving the treatment he desperately needed. Noah served as ring bearer, beaming with pride in his new suit. Vanessa attended, sitting in the back, her face a mask of regret. She watched Lily walk down the aisle in a simple but elegant dress, radiating happiness that no amount of money could manufacture. When Ethan looked at his bride, the love in his eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't a business arrangement or a convenient match. This was real. After the ceremony, as guests celebrated, Vanessa approached the couple. Her voice shook as she spoke. I want to apologize, she said, for everything. I was blind, selfish, and cruel. You both deserved better than how I behaved. Lily, in a moment that defined her character, reached out and squeezed Vanessa's hand. We all fall short sometimes. What matters is learning and growing. I forgive you. Vanessa left the reception early, but something had shifted in her. She'd witnessed grace in action, and it planted a seed that would eventually change her own heart. Ethan and Lily built their life on the foundation of the values that brought them together. Ethan continued his work with the coal empire, but with Lily beside him, he began redirecting family resources toward charitable causes, homeless shelters, medical clinics, education programs for underprivileged children. Lily's influence softened the family's harder edges without diminishing their strength. Noah thrived, his education secured, his passion for soccer nurtured with the best coaches and programs. But more importantly, he grew up watching his mother and stepfather love each other with genuine affection, learning that character mattered more than credentials, that kindness was strength, not weakness. Lily's father lived 3 more beautiful years, surrounded by excellent care and the joy of watching his daughter finally experience the happiness she deserved. When he passed peacefully in his sleep, he died knowing Lily was safe, loved, and provided for. Years later, as Ethan and Lily sat on the porch of their home watching their children play, Noah now joined by a younger brother and sister, Ethan reflected on the journey. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Saying yes to someone from such a complicated world?" Lily smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Not for a single moment. You taught me that blessings sometimes come disguised. And I taught you that the most valuable treasures are often hidden in plain sight." "I was looking for gold," Ethan said, "and I found a diamond." "We both found what we needed," Lily corrected. "Love that sees beyond appearances. Faith that gives sacrificially. And a family built on truth. True character reveals itself not in how we treat those who can benefit us, but in how we treat those who can offer us nothing in return." Lily's kindness wasn't strategic, it was genuine, flowing from a heart committed to seeing human dignity in every person. Ethan's test wasn't about deception, but about discovery, seeking truth beneath society's superficial layers. Their story reminds us that love built on authenticity, compassion, and shared values creates a foundation stronger than any empire. When we give without expecting anything back, we open ourselves to receiving blessings beyond our imagination. The greatest wealth isn't found in bank accounts, but in hearts that choose kindness over comfort, generosity over greed, and character over convenience. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe to Nemi's story, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment telling us what you learned from Ethan and Lily's journey. Your support helps us continue bringing you stories that inspire, challenge, and change perspectives. Until next time, remember, the way you treat the least among us reveals the truth about who you really are.